remote and the screen went black. "Why did you turn it off?" Becky asked. Her disgruntled face was barely illuminated by the few votives I had scattered around my room. A tear rolling down her cheek caught the reflection of one of the candles. "It was just getting to the good part." "I've seen this 100 times," I said, rising, and ejected the DVD. "But I haven't," she whined. "What happens next?" "We can finish it next time," I reassured her as I put the DVD away in my closet. "If Matt were a vampire," Becky pondered, referring to her khaki-clad new boyfriend, "I'd let him take a bite out of me any time." I felt challenged by her innocent remark, but I bit my tongue. I couldn't share my most secretest of secrets, even with my best friend. "Really, you don't know what you'd do," was all I could say. "I'd let him bite me," she replied matter-of-factly. "It's getting late," I said, turning on the light. I hadn't slept the last 2 nights since Alexander left. My eyes were blacker than the eyeshadow I put on them. "Yeah, I have to call Matt before 9, she said, glancing at my Nightmare Before Christmas alarm clock. "Would you and Alexander meet us for a movie tomorrow?" she asked, grabbing her jean jacket from the back of my computer chair. We can't," I stalled, blowing out the votives. "Maybe next week." "Next week? But I haven't even seen him since the party." "I told you, Alexander's studying for exams." "Well, I'm sure he'll ace them," she said. "He's been cracking the books all day and night." Of course, I couldn't tell anyone, even Becky, why Alexander had disappeared. I wasn't even sure of the reason myself. But mostly, I couldn't admit to myself that he had gone. I was in denial. Gone. The word turned my stomach and choked my throat. Just the thought of explaining to my parents that Alexander had left Dullsville brought tears to my eyes. I couldn't bear accepting the truth, much less telling it. And I didn't want another rumor mill circulating throughout Dullsville. If word got out that Alexander had moved without warning, who knows what conclusions the gossip mongers would jump to. At this point, I wanted to maintain the status quo, keep up appearances until the RBI, Raven Bureau of Investigation, had a few more days to figure out a plan. "We'll double date soon," I promised as I walked Becky outside to her truck. "I'm dying to know," she said, climbing into her pickup truck. "What happens to Jenny?" She tries to find Vladimir." Becky closed her door, rolled down the window. "If I discovered Matt was a vampire and then he disappeared, I'd search for him," she said confidently. "I know you'd do the same for Alexander." She started the engine and backed out of the driveway. My best friend's remark was like a package of pop rocks blasting off in my brain. Why hadn't I thought of it sooner? I'd spent the last several days worrying how long I'd have to keep making excuses for Alexander's absence. Now I wouldn't be forced to wait an eternity in Dullsville wondering if he'd ever return. I didn't have to jump every time the telephone rang to find out it was for my mother. I waved to Becky as she drove down the street. "You're right," I said to myself. "I have to find him." "I'm going to Alexander's. I won't be long," I called to my mother as she sat devouring a J. Jill catalog in the living room. I had a jolt of electricity coursing through my veins, which had been stagnant since my goth guy departed. I grabbed my coat and ran back to the mansion to find any clues of Alexander's whereabouts. I couldn't let my true love disappear without a full report from the RBI. Nancy Drew dipped in black. Although becoming a vampire had always been a dream of mine, when faced with it, I didn't know what I'd do. Alexander already did what all great vampires do. He transformed me. I craved his presence every minute I was awake. I thirsted for his smile and hungered for his touch. So did I need to literally transform into a diva of darkness to be with my vampire boyfriend? Did I want to spend my life in greater isolation than I already did as an outcast goth? However, I had to let him know that I loved him no matter